You're probably doing more 2-track mixes than ever at this point, but that's okay now, right? Because we have stem separation. We have stem separation incorporated into FL Studio version 21.2 or higher. We also have stem separation incorporated into Logic Pro 11. And this is helping me get through my 2-track mixes a lot recently and get way better results. So if you're doing a lot of 2-track mixes, make sure you stay tuned in. I want to talk about how to rip the MP3, how to get the key, how to get the BPM, how to get the stems, and how to polish up a 2-track mix and get you the best results as fast as possible, make your clients happy, get you through your session. And without further ado, let's just dive right into these examples. So I have some examples here of 2-track sessions that I've worked on recently. But before we even dive into these sessions, I wanted to take you guys through my step-by-step process of actually working on a 2-track session. I mean, from the moment the artist sends you the beat, they send you the YouTube link, and you got to convert that into an MP3, and then you have to make stems out of that MP3. Then you have to find the key and the tempo, prepare your session. I wanted to take you guys through that entire process, show you how I do it. Hopefully it helps you guys with your sessions and helps you sort of like expedite the process. And I always like to start these type of videos too with a big disclaimer, because we are producers and songwriters ourselves, right? And I'm technically teaching you how to steal here. This is a copyright infringement issue. You're not supposed to be just taking beats off of YouTube, recording over them, and making full songs and then trying to release those songs commercially, right? We want to make sure everyone gets credited, everyone gets paid. That's the right thing to do. However, the exception is we also understand that putting out singles yourself independently now, that's a big investment, right? You have to pay the producer, the songwriters, you have to pay for the music video, you have to pay for the marketing, the distribution. There's all kind of expenses that you have when releasing a single, right? So when you release a single, you want to make sure it's the right single. And I totally understand that. You just want to be as helpful as possible to your clients as an audio engineer and music producer. And the reality is it's 2025 and 2-track sessions now are very common. And these are a lot of the sessions that are being booked in studios, at home studios and major studios. I've done these type of sessions at very popular commercial studios as well. So I just wanted to help you guys through this process because I know this is very common. And these are a lot of the sessions that you're going to get. So I want you to be as efficient as possible and make your clients happy so your studio can be successful. You can be successful as an engineer / producer. That's what we're here for, right? So here's our first beat. I have this Meek Mill type beat here. How could you ask for forgiveness? Right, that's the first beat the client sends me. So I got to turn that into an MP3. What I'll normally do is I'll just go to Google and I'll type in YouTube to MP3, and they'll give you a bunch of options here. These change all the time too, because these websites technically are not legal. We're not supposed to be ripping stuff from YouTube, right? So I feel like these type of sites change all the time. I'll normally just pick the first one, and then we'll grab our YouTube link, paste our YouTube link right into the field here, and then push convert. So boom, our video is converted from video to MP3. Now we download it. Now we have an MP3 of our beat, right? So now that we have the MP3 of our beat, before we even make stems, the next thing we can do is get the tempo and the key, right? We're going to need the tempo and the key for a few different reasons. The tempo being when we're editing things in our session, we want to make sure everything lines up. When we're adding effects like delay, we want to make sure that the delay knows the tempo of the session. So there's multiple reasons why we need the tempo. And then the key of the song, of course, if we're using auto-tune, we need the key of the song. If we're adding additional instruments to the production, we need the key of the song. And there's a lot of different apps. There's a lot of different ways we can find tempo and key. But I'll show you a fast way that I got into recently. It's actually through tunebat.com. So if we go to tunebat.com, we have Key and BPM Finder here. So I'll go to Key and BPM Finder, select files. Now here is our MP3 that we just ripped from YouTube and downloaded. We're going to upload that one in a couple seconds. Here we go. Now we have this beat is in C major, and if you know, the relative minor is A minor, and then BPM is 87. So now we have our MP3, we have our key, and we have our tempo, right? So we're almost there. But again, the point of this video is to show you how I incorporate stem separation into these sessions now as well, right? And again, we have stem separation built into Logic Pro 11 and higher, and then we also have stem separation built into FL 21.2 and higher as well. But again, I always make these videos not DAW specific at all, not gear specific, not software specific. I want to make sure you guys can get through this process no matter what DAW you have. And if you just have your DAW, your laptop, and your headphones, you're still going to be able to do this stuff. Because even if you do not have FL or Logic, there are third-party stem separators, like Lander being a huge one. So at this point in the game, there's definitely a lot of options, a lot of different ways to create stems. But again, I'm a Logic user, I'm a Pro Tools user. So I'm going to show you just one way through Logic. But again, you can do this with FL and third-party software as well. And the process with FL is very similar here to Logic. So I just open up a brand new Logic session. Now let's go import our MP3 that we just made. We're going to import audio file. So Logic is now asking if we want to convert our file sample rate to 48. Sure, why not? I usually work in 48. So now it's importing the file and converting the sample rate. Cool, now we have our beat. As you can see, obviously the beat is kind of mastered. I'm sure this got hit with compressors and limiters before it got uploaded to YouTube. So it's gonna be a little loud. But before we even get into gain staging and things like that, let's just convert this into stems. We're gonna go here to our stem splitter. And FL breaks down the stems very similar. I believe so does Lander in its initial process. We have vocals, drums, bass, and other. And in this particular beat, there's also like a vocal sample, right? I know there's no vocal in the beat, but we do have a vocal sample. So it's going to separate the vocal sample as a vocal, and then we're going to have our drums, our bass, and then other instruments, which our main piano, Rhodes kind of chords will fall under the other. So let's do that. Cool, now our stem splitter is done working. We have our 4 stems like we discussed. Our first stem being the vocal sample. Second stem being our drums. Drums meaning kick, snare, hi-hat. And if I wanted to go into this further, I could probably recreate this pattern if I wanted to and break those 3 stems down into a separate kick, snare, and hi-hat, right? But that's also a lot of work. I don't know if you want to go into all of that. I wouldn't do something that drastic unless I found a real problem with these stems. But this sounds pretty clean already, so I probably won't have to do something like that. And then our next stem is our 808 bass. Doesn't have a lot of transient, doesn't have a lot of attack, but that's okay. Again, normally these type of productions, we're doing a lot of layering. So we're getting a lot of our transient attack from our kicks and our snares here. So bass with drums together sounds great. And then we have like our main chords here, our Rhodes. And when this is played all together, these are our stems. But again, you see how this is clipping here on our master channel. So we're going to have to do a little bit of gain staging. It's also clipping on individual channels. And then I'm also anticipating that I'm going to add vocals, right? And then throw some kind of bus mixing, a mastering chain on all of this when we do our session. So I'm just going to turn this down in general. In Logic here, I can just take all the channels and turn them down and get all our gains down. Very easy process. This gets everything out of the red. We do some gain staging, create some headroom for us to work with before we go and export our stems, right? In Logic, we just go here, export all tracks as audio files. We're going to leave it at 32-bit float. We're going to leave it at wave. We're going to extend file length to project end. So all our stems are the same length, right? And then overload protection, we're going to turn that off. We don't need normalization. We'll create a new folder. Let's create a new folder. Meek, mill, tight, beat, stems. Let's actually call it Logic stems. gonna push create. So I have my new folder. I'm gonna export my stems into the folder. Okay, great. So now we have the MP3, we have the key, we have the BPM, and we have the stems, right? And that's an insanely quick process. You could even do that before the client shows up, right? If they email you the beat prior to the session, you can have the entire session set up before they even get here. I would actually advise you to do that. So you're not doing any of this actually in front of the client, right? Okay, so now I have my key, my BPM, my beat, my stems, right? I got everything I need to prepare my session. But here's another cheat code that I've been doing in Pro Tools recently. I actually created a 2-track template, which makes it even faster. So if we're gonna call this 2-track test, and then we're gonna go here and create from template. And we're gonna make sure we're at 32-bit float, 48 sample rate, stereo mix output. This is being saved into our Pro Tools sessions folder. So everything is great, right? So this is a 2-track template that I created. Let's open that up. And for those of you who are not Pro Tools users, you have to create everything from scratch in Pro Tools. When you open Pro Tools, there's no mastering chain, there's no channels, there's nothing. You literally have to create all the auxiliary tracks, you have to create all the channels, you have to create the mastering chain, you have to create the click track. So since everything in Pro Tools is extremely manual, I like to have these type of templates set up, right? So boom, here's our Pro Tools template. So our Pro Tools template already has a vocal chain for our leads, backgrounds, ad-libs. It already kind of has like a fake little mastering bus here, some vocal effects that I love, that I know I'm going to use all the time, auto-tune on individual channels, just in case the singer likes to use auto-tune, the rapper likes to use auto-tune. My channels are already being bussed into these auxiliary channels. So everything's kind of already set up here, right? I already have my heat on. Pro Tools heat is like saturation. It's emulating analog consoles and tubes, and it just gives the vocal a certain warmth, saturation that I enjoy. The tone is kind of like an EQ. It darkens the vocal or brightens the vocal. And so this is my template, right? So we go back to TuneBat here. Again, we were C major, 87 BPM. So let's type that in. On Pro Tools, we're going to set it up so my tempo is here showing and my key is here showing. So first thing is 81 tempo. Second thing, the key is already in C major because that's a standard key every DAW comes in. But let's just, I want to show you guys the entire process. And again, relative minor, so we can do A minor or C major. Let's just do A minor to be cool. Usually hip hop productions, darker productions are actually in the relative minor. It feels a little more minor. So we have our Pro Tools template here. We have our tempo. We have our key. So the last thing we'll do is import the stems that we made in Logic, right? So we go to import audio. Let's find where this Logic folder is. So we're going to go under Logic, Meek Mill type beat Logic stems. We're going to select all of these files. Add them here, open them up to new tracks. Okay, so we imported our stems. You see here, we actually have 5 stems. That's simply because one of the stems is just the full beat. It exported that as well. So we're gonna make sure we mute that one or just get rid of it. Let's delete it actually. We're not gonna need that for the session. We have our 4 stems here. One of the stems is actually still very loud. Maybe I forgot to turn that one down. Here's our stem here that's clipping. That's our drums. So again, our drums were still clipping a little bit. Maybe I messed it up when I was gain staging Logic. I'm not sure, but I turned the gain down here, -4. Now we have better gain staging. Right now we can name these. Let's say drums. Vocal, and the last thing is 808. So now we have 4 stems here, right? And we've done a 2-track session mix on this channel before. I'll put the link for that above. So for those of you who have seen the previous video, you'll know that I got this little 3 plugin process from our previous video. So I still do that on my 2-track beats, but since we have stems now, I can do that on my 2-track beat bus, right? So we can create an additional auxiliary bus here. And we'll call this production. So now we have an additional auxiliary bus here, right? And then we'll assign that to bus 15 and 16. We'll go here in our IO. So we know 15 and 16 are the production. So now we're going to send these 4 stems out into our production bus, right? And then we can put this processing chain on our production bus to impact our overall production, right? That's our mix bus for our production. So here we go. Thanks to editing magic, instantly we got the final product end result, right? So here's my mixer. Here are the buses that I created. There was also a female artist that came in, so I created an individual bus for the female artist, because since it's a female vocal, we're obviously EQing, compressing, and it's a different performance, right? So we're processing that a little differently than our main male vocal. So I'll play the main male vocal for a second here.
When I called and you ain't answer, I remember that. I was down, you was up, I took offense to that. I'm the one who really made it happen, always had your back. Every time them niggas came and clapped, I was clapping back. Damn, it's really...
And I can show you guys the vocal mixing process just kind of as a bonus, but I really wanted to focus on the stems here and how the stems helped us mix the production, right? So obviously with 4 individual stems, I was able to balance the production and kind of get the drums to sit where I want them to sit, the bass, the melody, the vocal sample, right? And then I was able to also process some of the stems. I believe the chords and the vocals here, I processed them through Pro Tools Heat. So I was able to get some drive, some analog saturation, and then darken the tone a little bit to warm it up. And then you also see that I was able to do some EQ here to make some room for the vocal, to clean up some muddiness between the kick and the 808. And then the last thing I did here was I did hear some issues with phasing. So I flipped the polarity on some of these. And if that sounds crazy advanced or confusing to you guys, it's not that crazy. I did an entire video on phasing and how to flip the polarity. I'll put the link up here. It's a short video too. Make sure you guys check that video out so you can understand phasing and polarity a little bit better. So I noticed when I flipped the polarity too, things like the bass being fuller and coming straight down the center. And when I listened to my mix in mono, I could hear the chords better, I could hear the vocals better, and I could hear the bass better because we just fixed some of those phasing issues. So that was a big deal. And then I ran those 4 stems through our production bus, right? And then ultimately I ran the entire mix too through God Particle. And this has been a hot sauce that I've been using recently. God Particle is great for mix bus or mastering, right? Because it's doing a couple different things here. We have an EQ where I turn the high down, I turn the mids up, I turn the lows down. So that helped us get a better balance on our frequencies, right? And then the amount here, it kind of adds more saturation, plays with the harmonics more, right? And then we also have the last step here, which is the limiter and the output. And then the input determines how much saturation or processing we're getting from this plugin too, right? So this plugin is kind of like a mastering suite, so to speak, or like a mix bus suite. It's doing a couple of different things, but I actually love it. I love what it does to the overall track. I love putting it on first. I love mixing into it. So definitely big shout out to Jason Joshua and the team at Credo for this God Particle plugin. I definitely recommend it. And it's pretty affordable, right? It's only $100. So, and I use it all the time. So I love my God Particle plugin. And again, I'm using this here on the mix bus, meaning all my processed vocals are going into that. And so is my production aux here is going into that as well. Everything is going into that before it goes into the master. So I'm doing way less on the master bus, actually. I do some mid-side EQ here on the master bus, and then I do a maximizer, I believe. And the maximizer has some upward compression, it has some soft clipping, it has some transient emphasis, and that's pretty much it. As you can see, everything here is bypassed on my master. That's how I was typically doing my masters on Ozone. Like I have kind of like a preset in my mind, and I have this mastering suite. But since my God particle is doing so much and we're doing so much in our mix bus processing, I'm doing way less on the final master, right? And then again, I would show you the vocal strip as just kind of like a bonus, kind of cherry on top over here. So I was getting some noise. It was a busy session. There was a lot going on in the recording studio, so there was some background noise. I wanted to remove that from the vocal. Then we get Soothe 2 to remove some harshness, smooth out the vocal, smooth out some sibilance, right? Then we got the C4, which is a multi-band compressor that I love to use on vocals. Control, balance the EQ. It kind of acts as like a dynamic EQ as well, right? And then I just cut off some low end at about 200. And that's a lot for a male vocal, but I felt that just helped the vocal cut through the mix a little more. When I do parallel compression later on, it's bringing back a lot of the bottom as well of the vocal if it felt a little thin. And then I got my R compressor, which is a very clear, transparent compressor. Waves Renaissance compressor. Always highly recommend that. Then I have my sibilance plugin here to remove some sibilance. I have my mag EQ here from Plugin Alliance. This just helps me brighten up the top end. This air band here is always amazing. On my level trim, I turned it down a little bit. Then I popped out some highs and upper mids and turned down some lows. So that cleaned up, brightened my vocal a lot more. Then I have free plugin here called Fresh Air that I like to use on vocals. Mid air and high air, we touched that up. And then I have a saturation plugin here, a tube saturation plugin here from Antares. And I just turned that up a little bit to about 3.5. And then the last thing is a final touch up EQ because we did a lot of processing. Just want to do one last polish on the EQ and touch things up a little bit. So that's my full vocal chain, and as you can see, I kind of just copy pasted that to the other buses, but I did minor adjustments. If it's a background or if it's an ad lib or if it's a female vocal, I'll adjust it accordingly, right? And then you'll see some additional buses here and some additional processing. Obviously my reverb, one of my current favorites being Valhalla Vintage Verb. This is kind of like a industry standard reverb at this point. My H delay, again, same thing. This is very popular, industry standard delay, right? That's through Waves. And then my parallel compression processing for my lead vocal here. I told you I wanted to get the lead vocal to cut through the mix, give it some bottom. So I just did that with an API compressor really quick. I turned on analog mode.
Mercy, no. When I called and you ain't answer, I remember that. I was down, you was up, I took offense to that.
So you see we're getting a lot of compression here, a lot of aggressive compression, right? And we're just kind of like mixing that into our main mix a little bit. And then I have a doubler. I do this a lot on vocals too. And we're sending our vocals into this doubler. And what we're doing with the doubler is we're only focusing on certain frequencies. So we're only spreading out the mid-range of the vocal, right? And we do that really subtle too. So I'm just like gradually bringing that into my mix as well. And that's pretty much our full vocal chain processing here. And again, all of the vocals and all of the effects are going into God Particle here as our final mix bus.
Mercy, no. When I called and you ain't answer, I remember that.
And then we're getting this mid-side EQing before we send it into our final maximizer. And our final maximizer is pretty much doing a little bit of processing, but mainly just getting us to our desired loudness, right? And then I measure that here through our waves meter. And I like to have our love set about like -8. I like to kind of stick to that as sort of like a format, a rate that's good for streaming and radio. And before we wrap up, I'll give you guys another example here. Big shout out to my guy, Joey True, from the temple of hip hop. So he sent me this sort of like boom bap production that he wanted to record on and release as a single. But the problem was he made the beat and then he lost the entire session. So in that case, we couldn't get the stems even if we wanted them, right? But he loves the beat and he loves the song that he wrote to the beat. So he just wanted to salvage this, right? And still make it usable and still put the record out. So at first we just tried to mix the beat as is, MP3 or wave, right? And just with the vocal right over it. But then there was still some challenges, some problems with the beat that I wanted to fix that I couldn't really do it without stems. So I just decided to do the same process, do our Logic stem separator, and then create stems for this beat, right? And this is more of like a boom bap hip hop production. So we have our bass here. We have our kick, snare, hi-hat, sort of like our boom bap drums, right? We have our bass, our boom bap drums. Now we have... So yeah, our third sound is our sample melody, and then our fourth sound is just some scratches and cutting, some like DJ Premier style chorus that he did. So I have my bass, my drums, my main sample, and my scratches, right? And it gave me a lot more control once again. I was able to do some EQing, flip the polarity, do a couple different things here in my mix. I actually have some of the things here bypassed. Let's turn everything on. And I'll show you guys like a before and after here too. Let's do that to be fair. This is before any EQing, compression, any of my mix bus processing. Let's listen to how the beat sounds. So this is the beat with everything bypassed. I basically just have like a maximizer here on my master channel just to get the loudness. So the beat is cool because it's boom bap, right? So we kind of want that dirty, grimy, grungy New York feel, right? So it does feel like that, but it also, I wanted to polish it up and make it sound a little more modern as well, right? And make room for our vocal, create some more like separation in the mix, right? So I wanted to do all of that, and our stems allow us to do that. And so this is after the processing now. So you can A/B it for yourselves. Now I'm going to bring all the processing back. Let's listen to this after the processing. So again, I was able to do a lot of different things. I was able to run this beat through Pro Tools Heat again, get us some analog warmth. I was able to do some touch-up EQ on individual tracks here. I was able to flip the polarity on certain things if I felt like there was some phasing in the beat too, right? And as you guys know in phasing, when something is phasing, you can get a lot of cancellation, especially when you're listening in mono, and we don't want any of that. We want to avoid all of that, especially on the low end, so we can have a bigger, fatter low end cutting straight through the mix, whether we're on stereo or mono, right? We want that body and we want that weight. And we have our mix bus processing for our production here, our 3 plugin chain that we've discussed a few times here on the channel. And then all of this goes into our master channel, which I have mid-side EQ. I have our God particle here. And then I have a maximizer on ozone just to get us to our desired loudness. And then I have our waves meter here at the end so we can measure the loudness. So that's my entire 2-track recording, mixing kind of template, right? Step-by-step process. I wanted to show you guys that because we're in 2025. We have stem separation. We have a lot of people recording on 2-track beats. And I wanted to just help you guys through that process and get your clients the best results, get you guys the best demos possible. And the reason we're calling them demos is because you have not purchased the production yet. And again, we want to make sure our producers and our songwriters are properly credited, properly paid, because we ourselves are also producers and songwriters. Treat people the way that you would like to be treated, and that's important here. I want to encourage that. I want to emphasize that. But again, I do know that you do need to do 2-track mixes. These are a lot of the sessions that are being booked at home studios and commercial studios. It's a very modern way to do things, and that's all good. So I wanted to show you my entire process, and I hope you enjoyed that and learned something. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell as well. If you have any questions, comments, definitely leave them down below. I address all questions, comments. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time. Costa Sound TV.